Right, just say an alternate board member to be just one. We ready to go? All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the July 1st, 2014 Planning Board meeting to order, if we could. And I'd like to appoint Patrick Harrison as an alternate tonight to be a voting member of the board. So, and need any deletions or additions to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept them as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Okay. I need an approval of the March 4, 2014 minutes.
Make a motion for approval as submitted.
All right, do I have a
Second.
second? Okay. First with approval and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Then we got a rezoning petition of the Franklin and Allison Howie property.
Okay, let me give you a brief rundown. On the property, it is on Highway 84, in its intersection with Airport Road. You have the map, so one is also on the screen for the public. All the orange area, in here at the north area, you've got Winsley Park, up above, subdivision, you got, the Village of Wesley Chapel right there, and you got St. John's Forest subdivision in this area. What they are going to is a PUD 14 zoning district. A PUD 14 basically allows you, with the PUD 14, there's 16 PUD districts, they could choose one of those. They chose PUD 14. It allows you 10% of the area to be B2, 35%, in this case, R6, and 55% R10, which are basically laid out on here. 10% of B2 for this property is 10.56 acres, 33.18 would be R6, and 61.93 would be the R10. Now, coming before you tonight is basically the overall piece of property for rezoning. Not any particular area where they're placing the districts. If they're able to get it rezoned, they'll come back to this board and basically put the zonings where they want it. This board will decide if you agree to put it in those places.
Can you go over the ones again? I'm sorry, for some reason my screen's not working, so.
You have B2 zoning, which is 10% of overall property. You have R6, which is basically 35% of property. And you have R10, which is 55%.
But these specific zonings, as of right now, are not specific to a certain area.
They are
Okay.
not. What you have on here is what they have come in with on their map, what they were thinking, but we cannot hold them to that. They'll have to come back. I mean, it made logical sense how they laid it out, because the commercial was up at the intersection. But that's not, of course, really considered tonight. This is for the overall piece of property to rezone.
Roger, would you repeat those percents for R6 and B2?
It's tough on the little map. The R6 is 35%, and B2 is 10%, which leaves 55%.
Thank you, sir.
Have any other questions, fellas?
Is it my understanding that the yellow striped area that runs in between the R6 and, yeah,
This was an old road right of way, which is just in the property. It was an old.
okay, and same with the striped area above?
Now, this is Airport Road.
Okay, that's Airport Road, okay,
This little sliver crosses over right here.
okay.
This is just basically the interior of the property, right here. That road doesn't really go to anything. I'm not sure if it's been abandoned, I'm not sure.
Which one's St. John's Forest?
Down here, at the lower end.
And are those existing buildings in the black that are on each of those properties? Each of those parcels? The two stripes, the
These
black.
are existing residences here. I do believe the old chicken houses are gone. 'Cause this is wheat field, it's just been cut out here on this side.
Staff, have any more comments with regard, or we need to ask for?
To the public.
All right, open up to the public. Anybody want to make a presentation?
Good evening. Roger, what I would like to do, if I could, I've got exhibits also on the board there. If you would pass these out to the board, to the staff as well.
You guys will would you please, both of you identify yourselves for the
Glad to, Mr.
public,
Chairman.
please?
My name is
Thank-
John Ross with Eagle Engineering. Also with me tonight is Mr. Van Southard with the Moser Group, both
Thank
of
you, sir.
Indian Trail, North Carolina. The exhibit that you are being handed is the same as this board, and I wonder actually if it might be more beneficial if we turn the large board around so that the general public can see it. Then I can point as we go with this. Together, Mr. Southern and I represent Mr. Frank Howey, the property owner and the petitioner for this map amendment that you have before you this evening. The project is called Weddington Point. I'd like to say, first of all, thanks, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board, for your service to the county as a county resident. We appreciate what you do, the resources, and the time that you commit to the county to make this happen, and we thank you. Also, thanks, Mr. Horton, Mr. Black, and Mr. Matthews for your delegation and your input throughout this process. We've had several conversations, several meetings for us to get to this point, and we appreciate the service that we get. What we are requesting this evening is a rezoning under the existing land use ordinance PUD number 14. That's all described in section 138, but for everyone here, let me describe again in more detail what that is. A planned unit development, or a PUD, actually has 4 options within the county: high density residential, medium density residential, a couple options for commercial development, and light industrial. Let me iterate for everyone that we are not requesting any type of light industrial or any industrial for this development. What we have done is identified the PUD number 14, which is the high density residential is the R6, or 6,000 square feet per lot. The medium density is an R10. And we have selected the B2, which falls under the PUD 14, the B2, which is more of a neighborhood-friendly commercial component. It is specifically stated in the ordinance that each of these components will comply to the underlying zoning. So if we say we're going to do a B2, all the components of the B2 ordinance fall for this property. You have before you a color rendered map, and it does fall with what Roger presented. But you see the yellow area is the intersection. That is what we propose as the roughly 10 acres of commercial development. We would like to buffer the commercial, good land use planning, with a higher density residential, which is the green area, and then the lower density residential, the R10 lots, are what you see in the more orange color, and that is what is more adjacent to St. John's Forest, to the Village of Wesley Chapel, and abuts Winsley Park along the frontage as well. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Southard and let him address the commercial component of this development.
Again, thanks to each of you for hearing us tonight, and we appreciate the input we received early as we went through this process. Obviously, this is an important corridor with the airport, which has actually become known internationally now for its concentration of aerospace manufacturing. And we've been quite amazed to see on the commercial brokerage side some of the comments we get about this area and what that means for the county in the future. So I guess as we've seen that, and the visions come through our group as well, as to how do we work with you to plan you going forward this whole area. But also on the commercial side, I think there's a great opportunity if we do it in the right way that'll support the residents, support the area, and identify the needs and match the zoning with the needs. I think it's a win-win for all involved. The DOT apparently too has recognized the importance of this corridor. And if you've noticed on the plan that John handed out earlier, you'll see the roundabout that's been approved and I guess funded and ready for construction. So all that'll be coming for us shortly too. And again, I think that's just a good indication of how timely all the involvement is, again, on 84 and Airport Road. When we look at a commercial development, first of all, there's got to be an identification of a real need. There have been a lot of projects that just go out and they're maybe ahead of their time and they struggle. Well, fortunately, we have through some technology a report called a gap analysis. It comes from the best demographics that are available, and it'll pinpoint exactly what is needed and what is not needed. And obviously for the neighborhoods, the thing that would seem to make the most sense, and we'll share some numbers with you in just a second, would be something light and neighborhood supportive of, again, the residents and also the businesses around, and then positioning for the future of the airport. I guess the aerospace and manufacturing is one of the top few concentrations in both North and South Carolina, so it has become a very important aspect of our community. But our gap analysis basically, and we can do it in different segments, I used a 3-mile radius because a lot of the retailers want to know exactly what's in that category, in that radius, and what the categories are. But there's, if you'll notice on the bar chart to the left, over $250 million in demand, and in supply, we're showing only 76 million in supply for a gap or a needed increase in commercial of $179 million. Now, what's kind of interesting about that is you don't find those numbers every day. So it points out a glaring need for commercial support for the homes and for the businesses. And if I'm a resident or if I'm on the planning board, I might say, well, what kind of businesses might fit in the commercial? We're only going for 10 acres, so that limits it in itself to more of a neighborhood commercial type shopping center or just overall commercial development. The gap analysis indicated, for instance, that in the category of health and personal care, there's a $13 million shortfall. Now that could be doctors, other professional services. Full service restaurants, there's a $10 million gap, meaning that people are driving outside the area to fulfill that need. On soft goods like clothing and shoes, $14 million. Grocery stores, $15 million. And we could stop there for a second. At a 10-acre site, if it were a grocery store, that would chew up the entire site. There'd be room for maybe a little bit of shop space, maybe not even an out parcel. So that might give a feel for the type uses that would come in. And ironically, it's so there's such a need on the demand side for commercial. There are very few areas that are overserved, but ironically, the one that is are large boxes. So the site's not big enough anyway. But for department stores, there's the supply exceeds demand by $14 million in the kind of trade area. So I think you'd be looking at very much of again a neighborhood soft service type development, limited to 10 acres. On the residential side, again, I think from what Eagle Engineering's put together and what we've worked hard to deliver would be something very consistent with what's already there, and in both in density and in quality. The average income, the median income is $62,857. So I think we'd be safe in delivering a builder at whatever point in time, there's not one identified, that could be at that level or above. So if there are any questions, happy to take those.
Any questions, anybody?
So then is your proposal, can you give a breakdown of roughly how many homes you'd be proposing in each of those areas?
Oh, per area?
Per area?
We've got 194 total.
Yes.
109 total?
194 total.
Between the R10 and the R6, the 194 total lots, that's on about 77 total acres, committing common open space, almost 28 acres of common open space, and then the commercial piece beyond that, right around 10 acres.
So what size lots are the homes?
The R10 lots are 10,000 square feet lots, and as a good example, the larger lots that we back up to in Winsley Park are R10 type lots. The higher density residential, the R6 lots, are very consistent with what we back up against in St. John's Forest, as well as the Village of Weston Chapel. That's 6,000 square foot lots. Those are the minimum size lots.
And at the top of the exhibit for the site plan that was developed by Eagle Engineering, you'll notice arrows with .235 acres, .179. Those are the actual surrounding subdivisions, and what we're trying to illustrate is that this, in fact, would be very consistent with what's already out there. So those would be the acreage size per lots in those neighborhoods.
The .235 equates to an R10, the .179 to an R8, the 132, 138, those would be they are actually less than an R6 lot.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact on current school situation as far as how that would, where these houses would go to school, and what impact does that have, if you know, on the current school situation?
They would be districted to the Monroe schools, and we talked about that, and obviously the school system with the redistrict has been in some flux. We think it'd be a positive in that new homes at a price level that we think would be a benefit to the Monroe school system.
A benefit to the school system?
We would hope that, type houses coming in would actually feed, positive flow of people to the school system. Are you talking about numbers going to it, or the type?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, these homes are going to be geared toward people with families, I'm assuming, which would only further increase the number of students going to schools that are already overcrowded. How would...
The Monroe City School System is not overcrowded at this point. Sun Valley, Weddington, yes. The redistricting is to bring more toward Monroe. Monroe is not, even with the new districting plan, that overcrowded.
So you're saying that this housing project would send students to Monroe?
Yes.
As it's currently set up, it would.
Yes.
As long as they don't redistrict again. Right now, the way it's currently set, that would be in Monroe schools.
So are you saying the average price, if I'm reading this right, of the houses that you're going to build is $238,000, or is that all the houses in a 3-mile radius?
That's the average in a 3-mile radius of the current homes, based on the demographics we ran. Based on infrastructure cost of the raw land, cost of construction, it's hard to imagine the new homes being any less than that, and most likely it certainly would be north of that.
What are your houses going to run?
There's not a builder identified for this yet.
Pardon?
There is not a home builder identified for this yet. We would expect it to be in that range or above, simply because of the current cost of each line item.
So tonight, are you specifying these areas as B2, R6, and R10?
No.
Okay.
I'll stay again.
But that PUD, 10% of it has to be B2, or can be B2, 35% can be R6, and up to 55% can be R10. So, those are the types, the zoning types that go in there, but tonight, it's just the PUD part that we're talking about, not what the individual pieces will be.
So in the PUD, you say it can be 10% B2.
You can't have more
What-
than 10%.
Right.
So it's less than or equal to 10%. Less than and equal to 35, less than or equal to 55.
55, there's no cap on the 55. You could have more of the large.
Okay.
There's caps on the R6 and the C2. The R10 is not a cap, so you could have less
Okay.
10%, less that and more of the R10.
But there has to be a certain, does there have to be any B2 or R6? Or could it theoretically be all R10?
Well, it's supposed to be a PUD, an integrated PUD.
Right.
So you would assume
That you're,
that PUD, you would have some of each one of those elements.
okay.
The ordinance says you do have to have the 3 components.
You do have to have the 3 components in somewhere around those ratios. What types of utilities are available? Is there sewer and water, gas, everything available going down Weddington and around that area? How would those houses be served from that
Yes,
aspect?
water available in both Airport Road and Highway 84. Sewer is available on the site as well, gravity sewer at this point.
I'm sorry, through a private sewer system or?
No,
public,
Union
okay.
County Public Works, yes.
As you look at the topic of water, as was just mentioned, who supplies the water?
Union County Public Works.
So it does not come from the town of Weddington?
No, sir.
Because they've got a water problem.
Yeah, this is unincorporated Union County at this point, so no, we're not annexing into the town of Weddington.
Any other questions, fellas?
So they are married to those three classifications, the B2, B2, R6, R10. Those are the three that they gotta stick with going forward.
14.
Right. That roundabout, does that roundabout take into account the addition of 194 homes? I mean, that's a 2-lane road. I drive it every day. I'm gonna miss that field. You know, it just seems to me that that's, you know, you hit that roundabout, I think roundabouts work great, don't get me wrong, but it's gonna seem a little bit different there if we now got a commercial at that point. If we're gonna put in commercial, we're gonna put in 194 homes and we're gonna, commuters, just general increased traffic, because it's, you know, a land grab right now.
The roundabout is a DOT project that is, you know, funded and under construction or soon to be under construction right now. As we move forward with our project, we will, I'm sure, be required to do a traffic impact analysis that will dictate turn lanes, tapers, any improvements to Old Charlotte, to Highway 84 or Airport Road that are required specific to this project. When DOT designs, funds, identifies a project like a roundabout, they look at 5, 10, 15-year projections out. Whether or not they identified this specific request, I don't know that, but I'm sure they looked at the growth patterns across the county as part of their planning process.
What is the long-term plan on Weddington? Is that gonna stay at 2 or 4? Stay at 2? It's gonna go 4?
What do I know, it's 2.
Right now it's 2, but,
Certainly 2.
yeah, long-term will go 4. Wow.
That's Airport Road right there. That's where the roundabout's going.
Right.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
If there are further questions, would somebody like to
I
read?
do have one more question. As far as the stream or river that runs through there, have there been any environmental impact studies done on how that may affect any watershed? Obviously, you're going to be putting quite a bit of concrete and asphalt down. How will that impact that stream that runs through there?
A very good question. In our site plan that you see before you, we have exactly one perpendicular crossing of that stream. Again, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, it's not very well presented in that small sheet that you have. We will be certainly securing all permits from the North Carolina Department of Water Quality as well as the Army Corps of Engineers if required, you know, as part of our development. So yes, the stream will be protected. We actually propose buffering against it. We will have water quality requirements for the development, meaning we have stormwater management features as part of our open space requirements. Again, we are dedicating 27 acres of open space plus or minus on the project, most of which is in the area of that stream.
It's
If I could pass out a slightly larger map, it might be.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I'm just.
Your very question right there.
I'm also curious to know what kind of impact any houses that might back up to Highway 84, is that going to be somehow protected, or what's your plan to keep perhaps kids in their backyard away from busy
Some of that is
highway.
actually builder-defined. Our personal desire is that we create berms, we create buffers for two reasons. Number one, so that someone enjoying their rear porch is not looking at Highway 84 traffic, and somebody on Highway 84 is not observing everybody else's swing set. That would be our desire. That's part of the ultimate site plan construction document process that we'll be going through. But that's our initial thought. And again, some of that is builder-driven.
And you said you haven't identified a builder at this point?
That's correct, we have not.
You got
A lot of interest, but not a specific builder at this point.
coming into Union County, I mean, into Monroe. So if you had more houses, it's gonna cap it like that.
No, yeah, want to ask you on
Again,
that.
just for everyone's edification, the image that it was passed out is a slightly larger version of this, which is our concept plan for the zone.
So John, when that roundabout is added, will that actually take space away from your B2 area, or is that, 'cause it doesn't look like you've included that?
Right-of-way has already been dedicated, Mr. Howie, am I correct with that? Yeah, that right-of-way already
That
exists.
piece is actually not part of this property.
Yeah.
The roundabout piece is actually.
Oh, yeah, it's not part of the property, no.
'Cause on here, it looks like it actually cuts that corner. Unless
Is
I'm
that corner,
mistaken.
is
It's
that
the yellow
corner
part.
already dedicated to the roundabout or someone else's property?
Right-of-way for the DOT has already been dedicated and committed to DOT at that corner, yes, and we're working with the residual property.
Okay, so this area is what's gonna be cut, but that's not your,
It's
that's
not
not
part of our
parcel.
development, yes, sir,
Okay.
that is correct.
How long do you expect a project like this to take? Do you have an estimated time frame on how long it would take and what the impact on that road, 84, would be during construction?
The
Or
impact
Airport
would
Road, for
be-
that matter?
Would be gradual from an increase in traffic. Normally, absorption rates for a single builder are about 30 to 40 lots per year. Again, all of that is market-driven. If there are two builders, you know, it could be a 3 to 4 year project, if my quick math is right here, on the residential side.
Yes, do you have another question?
Yeah, can I read this?
You can.
Okay. This is in response to your question about school issues. This is a response from the school district, and this is regarding Rocky River Elementary, Monroe Middle, and Monroe High. Due to the recent redistricting, all three schools are anticipated to remain below cap levels for the near-term future. However, Monroe Middle School is expected to approach its watch level in 2018. Monroe High School is expected to exceed its watch level and approach its cap by 2017. Additional residential construction, whether at current or proposed zoning densities, can accelerate this approach and possibly force a capping situation. Prior to reaching the cap, high enrollments contribute to problems such as additional mobile classrooms, inadequate food capacity, restrooms, yada, yada, yada. So it seems like they're gonna be at their cap in 2017, Monroe at least, high. And then whatever additional people, I don't know how many are anticipated per family to hit the classrooms.
But if they're anticipating it being at cap by whatever year,
Mm-hmm.
so those people are gonna move somewhere.
Well, exactly, it's kinda, as Roger said, it's kind of
I mean, is
it's
it
an
gonna
answer
be-
with,
Is it gonna be here, or
with
is
an
it gonna be
enigma.
somewhere else?
Right.
These, you spend a lot of time talking about the percentages for, and location for B2, R6, and R10. But that's not set in stone.
Right, what you see before you is our intent. That is our concept plan for how we will plan to move forward with the project. Commercial is typically at an intersection, Higher density residential typically buffers the commercial from the lower density or medium density residential. So that, in my opinion, makes the most sense. I think others would probably agree with that, but I also recognize that they've got to go by the letter of the law for
So
what the
does
process is.
does that process have to be, could it have been done this meeting, or would it have to be in two separate processes?
As I mentioned at the very beginning, this is just for the property. They'll have to come back to you, if it's approved through the commissioners, they'll have to come back to the planning board to identify where the zonings are gonna go.
So they could not have set these lines
No,
tonight had
they're
they
just,
wanted to?
they're just proposing what I guess makes
Okay.
sense with the property.
It has to be some entrances.
Keep in mind,
that?
the draft
The thing is, if you have an entrance exit,
would allow
it does go back
for
to this.
a different type of process where you could nail
Traffic
down
on
the
the-
developer
on the-
on where they are and what they are, and all of those specifics.
It's gonna be
could
just like Wellington
identified
Road.
upfront,
Yeah, they asked them about that,
before we move forward
about
with
the,
this.
their
When
entrances
you don't
and
have
exits.
that
Looks like they have one coming
process
off the development going into the commercial area.
They can tell you what they want, and I expect that's what they'll do, but the reality is they could change that if they wish to.
One other thing to keep in mind, just like we've done before, when someone's going for a straight up zoning like this, is that keep in mind that within this PUD 14, they can do B2 type uses. So all the uses that are allowed in B2 can go in there. R10, which is single family, can go in there. Now R6, since the density is so small, you can do multifamily in there. So just like we said before, when you look at the zoning district, it's straight up, it's not conditional. Keep in mind all the different uses that can go in there as you think about your decision. So, you know, it's a PUD 14, but the types of uses that can go in there, they have to be B2 type, R6 type, and R10 type. So that, just keep those in mind when you think about the PUD 14, are those different uses appropriate in this particular location?
Just as a point of clarification, if this is not rezoned as a PUD district, can this concept still be implemented as a standard subdivision? They don't have to have a PUD in order to implement this housing.
It's basically, it's zoned R20, they can do an R20 cluster, which lets them go down to 15,000 square foot.
Okay.
Which puts the
So-
other 5 into open space if they choose to do that.
Okay.
But it has no commercial component.
Right, so it would lose the commercial component and it would reduce the density.
And you'd lose the multifamily possibly.
Okay.
So they could ask for rezoning of those specific characteristics as well, individual rezones, they could do that as well.
So the value of the PUD, I'm assuming in your opinion, is just to have a higher density that would include the commercial district and multifamily use.
And it's planned together, it should be integrated, in other words, where the, you know, like they were talking about, the single family and the higher density and the commercial, and then those areas have access to that, so it should operate as a unit, an integrated plan unit, where the commercial serves the residential and vice versa, but it works as a unit.
I do have one question or concern. As I'm looking at your entrances to this development, you've got 4 entrances coming onto Highway 84, and it looks like only one entrance going back on Airport Road. What type of impact is that going to have as far as slowing down traffic, turn lanes? I mean, it seems like there's going to be a lot of action of cars coming in and out once the subdivision is complete, with 4 entrances and exits coming onto, or is it, well, 3 plus whatever the commercial is, I guess, right?
Right, 3 on the residential, and probably 1 or 2 on the commercial, that's correct. And that's a long distance. Again, this is a 100-acre piece of property. This is not
Right.
a small development. So all of that site distance, points of access, all of that would be coordinated through DOT. Traffic impact analysis may very well dictate where the drives would or would not be. Again, this is a concept plan. This is what we propose, where we would like to proceed. But certainly DOT gets the final say on points of access on Highway 84. And the access point across the street, we aligned with an existing roadway on Airport Road.
Mm-hmm.
The interest there of Winsley Park.
I'm just concerned about is traffic slows down for a turning vehicle, and they just get back up to speed again, they may need to slow down again for another turning vehicle
Well, there would be
exiting or
turn-
entering.
Yeah, most likely there'll be turn lanes and tapers just as a function of what the Highway 84 traffic loading is right now. What I could see is DOT suggesting, why don't we blend together perhaps the first entrance in the commercial and the westernmost entrance into the residential. Those two could probably be blended together as a, more substantial entrance. Maybe there's only 3 points of access or something like that, but again, we're at a concept planning stage and recognize that there's a lot of adjustments to be made over time.
Also keep in mind, at least coming from the Wesley Chapel area, that roundabout, one thing that it does do is within a certain distance of the roundabout, slow down traffic in
Right.
that direction, to give you some slowdown.
If it's anything like the one in Weddington, it will definitely slow down traffic.
That's for sure.
And there are no plans to, well, those are all cul-de-sacs adjacent to that, so there are no plans to connect to any of those other subdivisions, correct?
No, sir. Our intent is, very good connectivity within our community, but we have no access points for adjacent. Yes,
You don't see with the amount of houses, you don't see a park or anything like that for children to play in?
I see 27 acres of open space, which very well could include an amenity, a pocket park, they call them, or neighborhood-type parks. I don't anticipate an amenity like a swimming pool or clubhouse, but again, that would be a developer decision.
That whole thing is.
Please.
194 acre unit total, that does position it where there could be like some impact by the water. Certainly if that side of a nice entrance, and they very well may move forward with the pool clubhouse on there. You've had some of those discussions with them. I think you're in a threshold in size and pretty much fine.
Can I ask you guys, the one little piece that's on the other side of the road is by itself.
Yes, sir.
Is there any, you guys just gonna keep farming that, or what's the use for that piece?
There's not any, that falls within the R10 category.
Right.
With the zoning, but it's not anticipated as being developed. That would count as part of the open space.
Okay. It will just be kept mowed and cleaned up and everything by part of the
Yes,
homeowners or whatever?
it's wooded now. We would likely
Yeah,
just
okay, just
repaint it
leave it
as
alone.
natural. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, a little sliver. How much is there, Mr. Howard? Do you know?
I think it,
Okay.
about 2 acres.
That could be a one building site or something down the road, or two if y'all decided.
It could be. There's not very much depth to it off the right-of-way of
Yeah, I
84.
see that.
Probably would be a better use for us just to
Just
maintain
to
it
leave
as,
it alone?
yeah,
Okay.
undeveloped open space.
Okay. Any other questions, you guys?
The roundabout, is that a two-lane roundabout?
Right now,
Sorry, not two lanes.
One lane.
One lane.
One.
Sorry, one lane.
So it's not like the one in Weddington?
No, just.
It's not like the one in Weddington? Oh, that makes a big difference. Holy cow.
Not this time.
It's one lane.
If any other questions do arise, we'll certainly be glad to address as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else in the audience tonight? Yes, ma'am. Would you come forward and? Yeah, we need you to come up because of the microphone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What's your name again?
My name is Shirley Beth. I live in St. John Forest.
Yes, ma'am.
And my only question is, I appreciate him asking the question about the school district, because I do work with the school system, and we are going through that redistricting process and putting those extra houses out there. I know it's gonna be an impact on the Monroe School eventually within 2 to 3 years. But my question now is, they're gonna put out there another 194 houses. Where's the fire district for those houses? St. John, pretty much fire district is Baker's, and they got close to 700 houses out there. Can Baker handle us in addition houses?
Has anybody studied that at this point?
What fire district is it in? Is it in Baker?
Yeah. As far as I know, that I used to be president of Baker's Fire Department. That is in the Baker's area, I'm pretty sure. So that's something that we, should be looked into. I think once they present their total plan, we need to discuss that further and make sure we talk to the Bakers Fire Department and make absolute sure they're comfortable with it, to get their recommendations. Talk to the chief.
Because we had one house fire out there, and the Wesley Chapel Fire Department was the first responder before Bakers got out there. And like I said, that development keep growing, but I think the max is at 735 houses, and I think they're short by 100 houses now.
Yeah. I think the beauty of being in the county, you don't pay any city taxes.
I know it.
But if you get brought into the city, then you get the city protection. And, you know, that's been a, you know, a big thing out in your area. Because, you know, there's a whole lot of advantages to living in the county, but there are some police and fire disadvantages because of just the speed of the people getting to you, you know. And I think that's throughout our county. You know, we've got a lot of great volunteer fire department people, but sometimes it's a distance for them to get there, you know, so. Especially if they're on scene somewhere else. Then, like you said, you gotta call Wesley Chapel or
Well,
Monroe.
you gotta also, you know, I'm on the homeowners association board too out there. And the biggest thing we have, if you have a fire and it's on Bakers, they gotta cross over that railroad track in order to get to you. And if it's a train on that track, you can just forget it. So you have to depend on Wesley Chapel to come out there as your first responder. And I just hope you just take that in consideration when you're putting that minimum houses out there and what it's doing to that fire department.
What is the homeowners association in St. John's Forest? Have they talked about this at all?
We have talked about it. We've been knocking on some doors, and we keep getting knocked down, and I'm pretty much on that committee, so I'm gonna go back to the fire marshal and knock on the door again, but they had told us before that there need to be another exit out there on the airport road. We only have one exit in that development.
And besides the fire districts and the exits, any other concerns regarding the project that you've heard in your neighborhood or?
Not yet.
I think the biggest concern, what she's
Fire-
saying, is
access
getting
and-
out of their development, because they've only got one way in and one way
Oh,
out.
okay.
Large
I'm pretty sure the other
developments.
development, I'm pretty sure they probably have more than one way in and one way out.
Yes,
Which is smart. But yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna ask a question. My name is Jim Sharp, and I live in the village of West of Chapel. You brought up the traffic flow. In the morning when the buses come, I said there's one way out of our neighborhood out of airport going towards 84. Airport Road backs up 10, 15, 20 cars. I understand we're gonna put this roundabout, which in theory sounds good, but we all know that's not gonna work in the morning with the businesses and the flow of traffic from Monroe. Now you're gonna add 194 houses. Average household's gonna have 2 cars, give or take. So now you're averaging, we'll say 400. Well, some of those are also gonna have high school kids that are driving towards Monroe. So now we're looking at 550 extra cars at the single roundabout. I don't think it's gonna be able to handle. I mean, right now, the intersection can't handle, there's probably a wreck, once a week there? Minimum. But now you're gonna put commercial plus 194 cars on a single roundabout? It just doesn't make sense. Either you gotta expand Airport Road to minimum 2 lanes each way at 84, minimum 2 each way with a turn lane to handle the commercial and stuff. Because right, as I said, there's a wreck at least once a week at that intersection. I've watched people be killed at that intersection, and I've lived at that intersection for over 10 years. It just won't be able to handle this development right now unless the DOT changes 84 and airport. I said, I'm not against the development per se, but at the current time, I don't think the infrastructure can handle it. Because I mean, just our neighborhood with Union County Waterworks, we've had, in the last 2 weeks, 4 different water main breaks. Now you're gonna add commercial plus these 194 houses, and we're right, my house is on the backside of this. The infrastructure right now, Union County, when I was talking to workers, said they can't handle it right now. They're busting at the seams. That's why they're raising our taxes to pay for the infrastructure to bring the water up to code right now. They said, not against it per se, but at this time, I just don't think the county's ready.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Mleitner. I'm at 405 Galesburg Drive, and I concur with what Jay said. I want to bring up the issue on the water is the biggest concern for me, because as I understand it, we're still in the water restrictions. And in our neighborhood, we live in Villages Wesley Chapel, and the water pressure has always been an issue. I've been there for 9 years, and since day one, the pressure's always been, it's there, but it's really, if we take on more housing, it's going to get really bad. And we don't know of any, we haven't heard of any plans where the water department is going to make a new tower or increase, the system or whatever. But we really agree with what Jay was saying. I like the idea of this development. It sounds like a great idea, and it's going to increase. Hopefully, it'll increase, property values, et cetera. But the infrastructure is not there yet. And I just want to reemphasize that to you guys, that that is very, very critical, especially with the traffic and the water. Thank you.
Thank you.
On your commercial area, you're not sure what's going to go in there?
Again, we restrict it, it's only 10 acres, but it's only, parking and setbacks and buffering and everything else. It's not that hard to develop.
What,
We don't anticipate maybe about all for 2 years, and then maybe some, a 1,000 foot redevelopment that's able to be one larger future, but that's the case, give up the outparcel.
what kind of buffering? You have 11 houses that are going to back up to it. What kind of buffering are you going to have between the backyards and the commercial area?
If it's something that's very sensitive from the commercial development, I'm stacking this planning as well, so I think it's, personally, I think these things will be very adequate, and it'll be very attractive to move for not to.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Maybe I can help address a couple of the questions, and good questions that were brought up. Let me iterate the fact that Highway 84 is the major thoroughfare in this area, and Airport Road is the minor thoroughfare in this. When traffic is a concern, we recognize that. When DOT designs and sizes the roundabout, they look at long-range plans for this area, growth patterns of the county in this area. Our traffic, again, somebody noted, we've got more access points on 84 with a single access point on Airport Road. The vast majority of the traffic from the commercial and from the residential pieces will be going to 84, not stacking up on Airport Road. With regard to the water and the sewer and all the utilities in the area, we'll be seeking from the private utilities, Piedmont Natural Gas, Time Warner Cable, all of those guys, willingness to serve letters. But Union County Public Works has a very specific process that they go to. They require a sketch plan review submittal from us. Again, assuming we get our zoning in place and we start the actual site plan development process, we submit plans to Union County Public Works and they go through a sketch plan assessment. Within that, they take our system, we tell them the water demands, the number of units, the residential development, so they know irrigation water, they know how much water our site will be demanding, how much sewer we will be discharging to the county system. And then they have a Black & Veatch, a consultant on board for them. They input the data, verify the data, input it in their model, so that if there are water system pressure concerns, sewer capacity concerns, water capacity concerns, they identify those early in the sketch plan process. So as we would move forward with our construction documents, we know if there's a water main that needs to be upsized or a sewer main that isn't adequate, we get to, they call it developer donated projects, you can call it what you want, but we get to help the county shore up their infrastructure in that process, and that's a very common process with the county. Thank you.
Sir, I have one more question about your commercial area. You have arrows going in and out of the development. Is that access from the development?
Probable access points, certainly not defined that they would be exactly there or that many. We just know that there would probably be access points, and I think there actually is one or two on Airport Road.
Right.
We need to verify that that's what, as we get into actual planning of that, what works best for there.
If there would there be some kind of a code or something for the people so nobody can get into the development that doesn't belong in there? Some kind of a gate or something?
Oh, are you saying if there's cross access between the commercial and the residential?
Right.
Personally,
They have it like at Sun City. They have a gate down
Right.
at Sun City where only the residents can get in
what
and
we're
out.
trying to promote is a neighborhood level commercial development. I'm not sure that we want gates in between. I think we'd much rather have pedestrian connectivity car connectivity, so that somebody who lives on the far end of the community, if they're not able to walk or ride a bike, they can still drive without getting on 84 or Airport Road. Yes, there's always a concern about, is there a lot of cut-through traffic getting from one neighborhood to another? Generally, with connectivity, not cul-de-sacs, but with roundabouts and traffic attenuating items, I hate speed humps, but there are ways to do on-street parking and other things that help attenuate the traffic flow and deter from the cut-through traffic, and we'll certainly look at that in our ultimate design.
Kind of like Brandon Oaks, Holly Park.
Yes, sir.
Those kind of ideas then.
Yes, sir. Lake Park.
Right, yeah.
One of the things that I think Jim had alluded to is the backup on that section of Airport. Will that not lead to people cutting through Airport Road through the subdivision? And you've got some pretty straight areas there that my concern would be that people start flying down those roads.
Ultimately, we would not want to create, for the safety of the residents, we would
Right.
not want to create a cut-through condition. We'd want to have enough turns, traffic circles, that type of stuff to avoid that condition. There's always going to be a quicker way to get somewhere. We probably all look for them if we're stuck on Highway 84 or Airport Road. But we would do everything within reason to avoid cut-through traffic. The same with the commercial site. We don't want to provide, a straight direct cut from Airport in case the roundabout is slower or,
Right.
there's an accident or whatever the case is. We don't want people cutting through necessarily the commercial site as well. The retailers may say otherwise, but it's not the most desired condition.
Staff, you guys got some more things you need to discuss?
Just the recommendation on the shift.
Okay, yeah, please.
Everything's through.
Yeah, you guys all done? Got any further questions?
Anybody else in the audience that wants?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I'm sorry.
I'm Patrick, I'm also from Village of Little Chapel. And I think that one of the good concerns here is nobody knows concretely yet what the redrawn school district lines are going to be yet. So I'm kind of concerned if there isn't going to be excess pressure inadvertently placed, depending on what they end off deciding on the school lines, school district rezoning in the end, with this coming into play. And to do it now when the school district doesn't know what they're doing yet, seems kind of risky, honestly, to me. Because I mean, what if they could do it one way, they build the 194 homes, and then suddenly one of them starts becoming way more burden, then you have to redraw the lines again, right? Or you introduce more schools again, which, I don't know, right now that seems kind of risky to me, and what doesn't sound valuable or good. I'm also questioning the need for the commercial area at this point. I mean, it sounds nice, but the Indian Trail, the Sun Valley commercial area really serves a lot of good need right now. Even the out where the Target is just down the road, they're not that far away. I don't really see the need, honestly, for the commercial section. And I don't really like the fact that they're not really legally bound to stick to the current plan, because, I mean, they're here to make money. We're all wanting to make money, but if they had a proposed developer come in and want to do light industrial, he has no choice. He has no reason not to go with it.
It's not allowed under the code.
Well, you said it light industrial.
Light
You
industrial
could
is not
have.
allowed.
No, I thought I heard them say.
No, it's not like Roger Chris said,
No.
but under the PUD.
No, he's just doing B2, R6, and R10.
Okay, so there.
What he was explaining was there's 16 PUD districts.
Okay, I
And
thought it-
some of the PUD districts do have somebody else, but they didn't choose
Okay, I
that
thought
one.
I heard that he could have light industrial, which was.
If they
some-
chose that particular PUD that had that in it, but they didn't.
Okay, I thought I heard them. I misunderstood that one, but my concern about the commercial, I don't really think that's honestly needed near here. He can talk about computer programs doing everything all day long. I'm not really sold on it. There's so much other good options really less than 5 minutes away. I don't see the need for it, but that's just me. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is truly looking forward to watching what is going to be in years from now, and how do we plan around that now for the future, not just day-to-day. So, give us a quick
Roger.
Okay. The staff.
No other questions from the public? Dan?
I'm just a concerned citizen. I talked with the state about the road, the
roundabout they're building. And they say they have actually designed it to be able to expand it at some point in time. Like if someone were to build a subdivision across the street from where it is now, on the other side, that they would have to possibly finish it up if if it gets some additional traffic out there at some point in time. So they're planning ahead for that.
Folks, anybody else? We're in no hurry, so it's your time to speak if y'all have anything to say. Okay, yes, sir.
Staff recommendation, the favorable characteristics of the petition. Site is located on C-84, a major arterial, and Airport Road, which is a minor arterial. Union County Public Works has stated that water and sewer are available to the site. The unfavorable characteristics of the petition is the Union County Land Use Plan projects future use to be 1 to 2.5 dwelling units to acre. Union County Schools have stated that this request, if approved, will add to current overcapacity problems. Third, the county is currently in the process of a land use ordinance rewrite and is proposing the elimination of PUD zoning and creation of legislative conditional zoning. This would make adherence to the specific plan, which you could consider at that time. The staff recommendation is unfavorable with 130 points favorable and 140 points unfavorable.
Yes, sir.
If I expand on that just a moment.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the conditional zoning part of it, because I think that's an important thing for you guys to think about. The project as a whole was not necessarily a bad project. We just think that the timing is off because of the fact that we are proposing to eliminate this type of a zoning classification within our ordinance. So if it does get approved, then we're going to have basically a non-conforming zoning classification that we're going to have to adhere to for years in the future. We think that there's a better mechanism for it. That's a conditional zoning process. The mechanism allows you to nail down some of the specifics of the project, buffers, some of the roadway issues with it, the characteristics of the site as far as the types of structures that would be built. You can place conditions on size of units. You can say, listen, I'd like for the units to be a minimum of 1,500 square feet, and those can be conditions that can be negotiated. So it gives a lot more understanding of what will happen instead of at sort of an open-ended look at this point. Again, the project we don't necessarily think is bad. We just think that the process could be better if it would be more defined. And that was one of the reasons at the staff level we felt that we would recommend denial of this request. Obviously, you make a recommendation, the county commissioners will have to make a decision on what to do. But that was our basis for some of our decisions on our recommendation.
Do we have any discussion amongst ourselves before we take a vote? Any other questions, you guys?
It seems to me that we're going to be doing a heck of a lot of work here, working on the new comprehensive plan. And going to put in a lot of time. Staff's going to be putting in a lot of time. We're going to have to look at, with the proposed elimination of the PUD districts. I'm concerned about the capacity of the schools. I think it's getting to the point where there's development approvals of all these subdivisions. Here, unincorporated Union County, Weddington, I mean, the kids are getting pumped in, and it's an attractive community to live in. There's no question about it. That's why I moved here. But we talk about, they talked, I forget the term you use for the, help the county update its developer donated. It seems to me if we could have a developer donated for that, we could have developer donated for schools. If we're having overcrowding issues. Now, I know that's something that has to go up on the state, and that's a fight that I'm not even going to begin to pick. But those are my concerns. That and the traffic, with the circle going in, approved, it's going to be going to construction. That's just my food for thought.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I appreciate all the comments from the board up here. Robert, you had some very good comments that really resonated with me when you asked about the access and egress. And I appreciate the landowner, and I appreciate the presentation that's been made tonight, but I guess I've got a concern that we're rolling the dice up here. And I think that we owe it to everybody in this room to make the best possible sound decision for all concerned, whether it be the property owner, whether it be homeowners, the county, the town of Monroe, Wesley Chapel, etc. And I think that some of the questions that everybody's brought to us tonight are very valid. Roundabouts, getting in and out of the subdivision, water pressure, sewers, etc. And to think that maybe the state does have a plan to widen the highway, but who's to say, is it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now when they go to widen it? When would they fix the water pressure, etc.? These are things that are existing in certain towns or villages around the area right now. And to compound this, I'm in a quandary on this. And there's no reflection on the presentation. There's no reflection on the homeowner or anything, but I want to make the right decision that I can go home, put my head on the pillow, and go to sleep and not worry about that I made the wrong decision with the honor of sitting on this board. So I really appreciate what you guys studied and mentioned, Roger, Brian, and I appreciate everybody that's here tonight and the comments from the audience. But like you, I've got some real concerns about it. I really do.
Well, I'm the chair tonight, but as a longtime realtor, and I'm going to tell you what I feel.
That's what I want to know.
Since 1977, I started in this. My dad started in '64. These have always been concerns. There's always been concerns about too much traffic, too much school, too much water pressure, too much sewer. So this is something we always deal with. That's why there's so many processes that a developer has to go through. They got to go to DOT. You've got to go to the county about water and sewer. They got to come to us. They've got to get all the questions answered, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. The fact that we haven't got our zoning finished should not hold up this developer. Anybody that brings it to us and it meets the criteria of what we have in place today, then that's what we should look at, not what we might have in place 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. We are dealing with what we have to deal with today. The schools are always going to be an issue. If every subdivision in this county right now was built out in full, we're going to have to redistrict again. So it's not bringing 194 homes on board. And I'm not saying that for these people's benefit. I'm just saying it in general. I mean, ever since I've been in the business, we've dealt with these kind of issues. So this is nothing new. And, I think that what they need to look at as developers, I mean, looking at this plan, the plan looks great, is how they do impact these roads, how they bring it safely in and out. But, from the standpoint is, the area right through there where they're looking, this land is prime residential land. And there's no better use for it than what they're doing. I understand you don't want any more shopping or you don't think there's a use, but, like they're saying, it's just a small amount of land. So it's my opinion, what we've got here tonight is a very well thought out, very well to handle this. It's a weird piece of land the way it's laid in here, and I think they maximize it the best possible way they can. And it's a ton of road frontage. That's a very unusual thing. You have this much road frontage, and I think the way they've designed this It looks very nice, and hopefully they can stay with what they got here. I'm sure it'll change again, because everybody will want to make changes. But, you know, we're not prepared to not, we can't do what, you know, we can't wait on each developer and tell them, well, you wait till we're ready. You know,
Well,
developers are gonna bring stuff to us, or we might as well not have meetings anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I highly respect that, but the question I've got is, and maybe I didn't make myself clear, and I was thinking as I was listening to you, but is this being brought to us under the right zoning? Should it have been unconditional? Is that the word you use, Brian?
That would be our new platform.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at. Is this the right platform or the wrong platform?
I don't know if I'm talking too much as chair, but
No.
again, my feeling is R15 zoning for this piece is not the best use for this piece. You know, you're not, a developer cannot go in today with the cost of land, the cost of water, sewer, gutters, curb, all the things that they've got to put in, and put homes in at R15, R20, and make it make sense. It just financially does not develop out. Now, I wish it did. I wish everything in the county could be 1 acre. That's, you know, you look up in some Fairview, they only want you to build on 4 acres of land, you know. And guys, we're only got so many acres left in that we're over in our county, you know, where some town or some city hasn't come in and taken over. So I think we should do it the best way we can. But that's my opinion is, for this piece, this is the best possible use that can be done with it. That's just my feelings, and you guys all have your own vote, so. Any other questions?
I have a question. I have a question for staff. Do we have an idea, and I know that we don't have a crystal ball, but does anybody have an approximate idea how long it may be before we have elimination of the PUD designation to replace it?
We
With-
actually have a kind of a deadline we have to meet, and that is November of this year. It could be certainly before then, but we have some buffer ordinance requirements that we have to have adopted, which are part of the UDO, and they have to be adopted prior to November or at the November timeframe. So we've been given the charge to have the UDO completed and brought to you and the commissioners so that they can potentially adopt it by then.
Adopt it by then and have it in force? November of this year?
November of this year.
That's sooner than I had thought. My concern is that we're asking a property owner to hold up on a project. My notion sort of dovetails with what our chair this evening has already stated, and that is that we ask the developer or the property owner to hold up because we're not ready for them with what we need to have. But it's going to be upon the owner of the property and his team to devise the means to make sure everything's taken care of as far as addressing traffic issues and those types of matters, other than school, of course. The schools are not their responsibility. But our approval tonight just gives a green light for the owner's engineering team to move forward with their site plan. It doesn't, our approval for rezoning, county commissioner's approval for rezoning, that doesn't actually give anybody the go-ahead for moving dirt or anything like that.
That's correct, absolutely. They have
It's-
to go through an actual master plan permit, and that requires full engineering on the site.
So there's other steps involved in the process. This more or less is just to give them a green light saying, go ahead with developing your site plans
Yes.
for us to look at and also review.
Yes, sir.
Question, and does the public get invited back to that meeting
They can come, but they have no input in that process.
at that process?
And
Okay.
that's one of the reasons why the conditional zoning process is being touted, because the public has input at that
Public comment?
at the stage of engineering. They have that ability. Whereas in this particular phase, they have no comment or input in the engineering phase.
Okay. So public comment really is for this particular project would be limited to tonight?
That's correct. Well,
Unless-
the commissioners hearing where they actually vote on the rezoning, that the public gets the ability to comment, but there'll be no engineering plans at the commissioners.
But it's going to be the county commissioner's phase of what we're doing tonight.
That's correct.
And after November, we'll have this new designation with the conditional use.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
So when they come back to finally specify these percentages, will the public have the opportunity to comment then?
I mean, they can certainly come here and listen, but the input part of that is open.
I am, obviously by my questions tonight, I'm uncomfortable with them talking about a certain percentage when that is not necessarily the case. But it is the landowner's prerogative to come to this board with a request whenever they want to and go through the proper channels, and that's what they have done. I have to agree with Russell. If they have come through the proper channels and made the proper request, I think we are obligated to make a ruling based on what the regulations are today, not what they might be tomorrow, and not what the school system might do tomorrow or next week or next year, because we certainly don't know what that is. So I think we have to make our decision based on the regulations that we're operating under today.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you make sure it wasn't glossed over, it does not meet the county's land use plan. I do want to make sure you understand that it wasn't just the conditional zoning aspect of it, but this proposal does not meet the county's land use plan.
As of today.
As of today, it does not.
What is the county's land use plan as of today?
1 to 2.5 units per acre.
How much?
1 to 2.5 units per acre. That is what the county's land use designation is for that property.
Which means the property won't be able to ever be developed with that.
We don't get involved in whether it can or can't. That's the commissioner set the land use plan and we abide by it.
But if we change the zoning, which is what they're here to do, they can develop their property. But if we don't, then he's gonna have to keep crops on it for the next umpty years, from a development standpoint. All right. Yeah.
Just to give my input on the situation, certainly the school district issue is a concern that I have. As people that live in this area, that have paid good money for their homes, have watched what's going on with the values of their homes, and have tried to put their kids into decent schools only to have them reshuffled. I think it's a little bit disconcerting that continues to happen, and regardless of whether that's an issue or not, I think development will occur. And if I could wave a magic wand, I would be in preference of allocating some of that cost back to the developers of projects like this, so that there is some sort of a contribution to enhance the schools. But unfortunately, I don't have that magic wand. But looking at a lot of the factors, including the issue of fire capacity, water capacity, some of the traffic concerns that I have, and certainly the fact that we do have some work to do on our UDOs, I too am a little bit uncomfortable going forward with this plan as it stands. Not that I disagree with the housing issues. I think perhaps a little bit less density, perhaps an opportunity to further explore and ask questions, and get some better detail on how this whole plan will lay out, would make a little bit more sense. So at this point, I can't say that I'm not in favor of the project overall, I just am not in favor of the project as it is presented today.
Any other comments, or we call the question? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion at this point that we reject the proposal as it stands.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
All opposed? Okay. Project is turned down as proposed.
Go to the commissioners.
Go to commissioners. And they make the decision on
Okay.
the request. This is the recommendation.
All right, folks. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for coming, everybody. We have the planning staff report now.
The planning staff report, on July the 14th, the UDO consultants will be here. They'll be holding a workshop with the Board of County Commissioners on the 14th to go over the third module in our UDO. And that third model covers parking, signs, landscaping, screening, accessory uses and structures, and telecommunication. With the presentation at the workshop on July the 14th, then on our first meeting in August, which I think will be the 5th, staff will go over that same thing with the board like we have with both modules 1 and 2. So modules 3 more than likely will be on our August agenda after the commissioners get their workshop on July the 14th. We're also in the final phases of the US 74 study. We're starting back up on that. It's basically, we've got a draft of the port. There'll be some public meetings, and if you remember, Stallings, Indian Trail, Monroe, and Union County were part of that 74 study that went from the Union-Mecklenburg County line to the Monroe city limits on their eastern city limits. We were looking at transportation improvements, land use, economic development, signage, aesthetics, and those kinds of things. So we hopefully in the near future will have a draft of that to come present to the planning board. And then you heard mention the comp plan, the transportation plan, on July the 8th, next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock here at the Government Center. It'll be the 5th meeting of the advisory committee, and they will be receiving a draft of the comp plan update and a draft of the comprehensive transportation plan. So we've got those 4 things. So they're just on the verge of coming to the planning board: the UDO, the US 74 study, and the update of the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive transportation plan. So all those will be here. August, September, October, November will be pretty busy months. Thank you.
Sounds good. Got any comments from anybody tonight? Nope. None? Well, I guess we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
That's what you see. We had so much trouble with it last time.
Let me cut, hold on, let me cut the other off. Yeah, don't look at that.
Yeah.
Ah,